They say when you die, your whole life flashes before your eyes. That's a lie. What flashes before your eyes is the last time you were treated like a human being. For me, that moment came and went long ago. Somewhere between the third rejection letter from the VA and the night a police officer ground my dog Tags into the snow with his boot. Somewhere between my wife's last breath in a cancer ward and the cold bench I slept on behind an abandoned train station, praying the wind wouldn't kill me before sunrise. I've faced bullets in Kandahar, bombs in Fallujah, and silence in the homes of soldiers I couldn't save. But none of that prepared me for what it felt like to be invisible in my own country. You want a hook? Here it is. I served 3 tours overseas, earned 2 Purple Hearts, dragged men out of burning vehicles with bones poking through my arms, and yet, the worst battle I ever fought was inside a small-town diner in Riverbrook, Pennsylvania, against the very people who were supposed to protect me. And the only weapon I had was my dignity. It was snowing that night. Not a postcard kind of snow. The kind that stings your face and settles in your lungs, like regret. I hadn't eaten in 3 days. The last thing I swallowed was instant coffee warmed over a trash fire. My coat was military issued, patched 3 times. My boots were cracked, the soles folding with every step. But I kept walking. There's an art to walking like you still belong in a place that's forgotten you exist. Riverbrook was quiet. Storefronts dark. A few locals darted into warm cars, not bothering to look twice at the man crossing Main Street with his hands in his pockets and his head held high. Then I saw the red glow of the Red Rail Diner. Its neon sign flickered like it didn't believe in itself anymore. Open 24 hours, it claimed. I paused outside, brushed the snow off my shoulders, like I used to in formation, and stepped inside. A bell jingled above the door. Warmth washed over me like a wave. Bacon. Coffee. Gravy. The air smelled like memories. For a second, I forgot I was no longer part of this world. But then it hit. Silence. Forks froze midair. Conversations died. A woman pulled her child closer. One man clutched his wallet, sliding it out of sight. The cashier stiffened. The guy in the booth nearest the door gave me a once-over and turned his face toward the window, like I was smoke. It wasn't the first time. But it never stopped hurting. I walked to the counter. Choose a stool at the end, back to the wall, both exits in sight. Old habits. I didn't come for attention. I came for dinner. The waitress approached, young, maybe 20-something. She had tired eyes, but she didn't flinch when she saw me. That alone made her different. "Can I get you something, sir?" she asked. Sir. That word used to follow my name every day. It hadn't reached my ears in years. Coffee. Black. And whatever the special is, if it's not too much trouble. She gave me a polite nod. Meatloaf. Comes with mashed potatoes and green beans. Sounds like Christmas. She smiled. Just a flicker. Coming right up. As she poured my coffee, I noticed them. 2 officers. Booth in the corner. Both watching me. Mid-30s, both white, both built like linebackers past their prime. One had the kind of smirk I'd seen before, in checkpoints, in jails, in places where people liked to remind others they had power. I nodded to myself and sipped the coffee. Hot. Strong. Almost made me close my eyes. Dumpster diving doesn't count as dining out, one of the officers said, loud enough to echo. Laughter. The waitress, whose name tag said Rachel, froze mid-step. Better count the silverware, Rachel, the second one added. Wouldn't want our friend taking souvenirs. More laughter. I took another sip. And make sure he doesn't lock himself in the bathroom. They shoot up when they get warm. Rachel placed the plate in front of me. Her hands were trembling. Thank you, ma'am, I said, my voice calm, deep, trained. The way I'd speak to a young soldier seeing blood for the first time. I cut into the meatloaf. Steam rose. The first bite damn near broke me. Salt, warmth, memory, it all rushed in. But I kept chewing. Then one of them stood. The heavy one. Kyle. He swaggered over, blocking the light with his bulk. What brings you to Riverbrook, Chief? Dinner. Where from? Out west. Where are you staying? Nowhere permanent. You're one of those, veterans. He said it like a disease. I nodded. Yeah, I figured. You people always play that card. His partner joined him, Barnes, I would learn later. Leaner. Sharper. Snake eyes. Real soldiers don't end up begging in diners, Barnes said. I didn't reply. Just looked at them both. Quietly. That made them nervous. Kyle picked up the sugar packet and dropped it on my plate. Earn your keep. Dance for it. I picked it up, placed it gently on their table. I earned my dignity in Kandahar, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't owe you anything. Barnes's hand went to his holster. Rachel stepped in. Officers, he's done nothing wrong. Stay out of it, Rachel, Barnes snapped. Your brother's still in the academy. Shame if something held him back. That's when I knew. They weren't just bullies. They were part of something bigger. Something rotten. They grabbed my arm. On your feet. I paid for this meal. You're disturbing the peace. I looked at Rachel. She was shaking. She looked like she wanted to scream, but didn't know how. If something happens to me, I said clearly, call General Harold Whitaker. Pentagon. Tell him Eli Turner is in trouble. Kyle laughed. Yeah. You want me to call Santa Claus, too? They hauled me out, dragging me across the linoleum like a sack of trash. My feet scraped. My body ached. And as I crossed the threshold, something slipped from under my coat. My dog tags. Barnes looked down. Smirked. He stepped on them. Metal on tile. The sound echoed louder than a gunshot. Then he kicked them aside. Oops, he said. I felt the fury rise. But I swallowed it. I'd been taught to master fire, not become it. They shoved me into the cruiser, slammed the door, and drove off. Inside that cell, hours passed. Cold metal, four walls, and silence. No phone call. No charge sheet. No explanation. Just silence. But I wasn't alone. Not really. Because I had one thing left, my name. And I'd used it. And somewhere, far from Riverbrook, someone heard it. I don't know what Rachel Miller expected to happen when she called that number. Maybe a voicemail. Maybe a polite hang-up. Maybe to be told she had the wrong extension and that the Pentagon doesn't take distress calls from diners in Pennsylvania. But I knew better. I knew the man on the other end of that line. General Harold Whitaker was a lot of things, a 4-star, a strategist, a cold son of a gun when it came to battlefield decisions. But above all, he was a man who never forgot who pulled him from the fire. He was pinned under a burning Humvee outside a village in Kandahar, the day everything went sideways. I could still see it, the sky dark with smoke, the shouting in Pashto, the pop of rifle fire too close to the eardrum. Most men would have called in air support and waited. But I was 28, angry, and stupid enough to believe "no man left behind" wasn't just a saying. I dragged him out. Took a bullet doing it. Carried him 2 miles through enemy fire with half a platoon bleeding around us. He never said much afterward. Just saluted me once, when I was on the medevac, and nodded. But sometimes a nod from a man like that weighs more than medals. So when Rachel whispered my name into a government phone, the wheels began to turn faster than anyone in Riverbrook could have imagined. I didn't know all the details yet, just that the agents showed up quick, crisp suits and sharp eyes, and I was out of the holding cell before sunrise. No paperwork. No mugshot. Not even a damn apology. The woman, Danes, held out my dog tags. Cleaned. Polished. General Whitaker asked us to return these personally, she said. I took them like they were a piece of my spine. Slipped the chain back around my neck and tucked it under my shirt. Where is he? I asked. Daniels glanced at her partner. Back in D.C. But he's already made several calls. Department of Justice. Internal Affairs. Veterans Affairs. Your name rang a bells in places that don't ring often. I didn't smile. Not yet. I was too tired. What about the cops? I asked. We're starting with a formal inquiry into use of force complaints in this precinct. That's the official language. But between you and me, Whitaker wants heads to roll. We walked out of the station into the gray light of morning. The snow had stopped, but the cold hadn't gone anywhere. I pulled my coat tighter and looked up at the flag hanging limp above the door. I'd saluted that flag 1,000 times in my life. That morning, I looked at it and didn't feel anything at all. Rachel was waiting in the parking lot. She wore a hoodie over her diner uniform, arms folded tight, eyes wide with uncertainty. When she saw me, she exhaled so hard her breath fogged in the air like a cloud of relief. You're okay, she said. It wasn't a question. I nodded. Did they hurt you? Not in any way that matters. She looked like she wanted to say something else, but couldn't find the words. Instead, she reached into her pocket and held something out. My shift ended right after they took you, she said. I went back inside and found these in the snow. It was my tags again, but she didn't know they'd been returned to me already. She had held on to them, protected them, like they were sacred. That small gesture said more to me than any official statement ever could. Thank you, I said. Rachel's hands were shaking. I wanted to say something comforting, something clean, but I'd spent too many years in places where comfort got you killed. You didn't have to believe me, I said instead. She looked at me, eyes fierce now. I didn't. Not at first. But I saw their faces when you said the general's name. I saw the way they panicked. I nodded. Are you going to sue them? The cops? I considered it. Not yet, I said. I want something bigger than money. What? Truth. She blinked. And then whispered, good luck with that. Before we could speak further, a black SUV rolled into the lot. Not police. Government plates. The driver stepped out and approached me. Mr. Turner, I've been asked to escort you to a secure location for debriefing. The general would like to speak with you directly via satellite link. I turned to Rachel. You okay getting home? She nodded. I'll walk. It's only a few blocks. The driver opened the door for me. I climbed in. As the SUV pulled away, I looked back once. Rachel was still standing there in the snow, small and stubborn, like a lighthouse in the storm. The safe house wasn't far, just a nondescript government building tucked behind a shuttered municipal court. Inside, They offered me a shower, fresh clothes, and something hot to eat. But I didn't feel clean. Not yet. The video call came 30 minutes later. The screen flickered. And there he was. General Harold Whitaker. Older now. Hair silver gray. Jaw still square as a brick. Uniformly sharp enough to cut glass. "Turner," he said, voice steady as ever. "Sir." We stared at each other for a long moment. "I never forgot what you did," he said. "I never forgot that I did it," I replied. He gave a small smile. The kind that only war-forged men recognize. "I've read the initial report. I've seen the footage. You held your ground. I was tired, sir. And yet you didn't back down. Not my style." He leaned forward on his desk. "What happened to you, what they did, that's not going to be buried. I've already pulled strings. DOJ is assigning a task force. We're digging into every complaint that precincts received in the last 5 years." "And the girl?" I asked. "Rachel Miller. She's on our radar now. We'll protect her. She put herself on the line for someone she didn't know. That counts for something." "It does," Whitaker agreed. I hesitated. "Sir, why me? After all these years?" He looked at me like I was asking a foolish question. "Because you made a promise once. That no man gets left behind." "Well, Eli, this country made that same promise to you. And I intend to see it kept." It took me a long time to speak after that. Because I wasn't used to being seen anymore. Let alone believe. "What do you need from me?" I finally asked. He leaned back. "Your story." And I realized then, that's what this was about. Not just justice. Not just revenge. He wanted the truth to come from someone who'd lived it. "All right," I said. "But if we're doing this, we do it right. No spin. No edits. Full truth," he confirmed. "And I want boots on the ground. Someone to dig. Someone who understands how systems rot from the inside out." He nodded. "I've got someone in mind. Also," I added, "I want to see those cops again. Not to fight. Just to look them in the eye when they realize who I am." Whitaker didn't blink. "You'll get your moment." We ended the call. And for the first time in years, I felt something strange stir in my chest. Something dangerously close to hope. That afternoon, a new team arrived in town. A lawyer. A tech specialist. A retired FBI liaison. All sent at the behest of the general. Their purpose? To start pulling threads from the tangled knot that was Riverbrook PD. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a witness. A key. Maybe even a lever. But I'll tell you this, being seen is terrifying. Because once people know your name again, you have something to lose. That night, I returned to the Red Rail Diner. I don't know why. Maybe to reclaim something. Maybe to remind myself it wasn't just a bad dream. It was quiet. Same booths. Same smell of grease and burnt toast. But the silence wasn't hostile this time. Rachel was mopping the floor. When she saw me, she set the mop aside. "You came back," she said. "Had to," I replied. "There's unfinished business here." She nodded. "You still want coffee?" she asked. "Always." She poured it. No tremble in her hands this time. "New officers came by earlier," she said. "Not locals. Suits. Asked a lot of questions." "Good. Some of the regulars are upset. They say you stirred trouble. I sipped. Truth tends to do that. She didn't respond right away. Then, softly, I'm glad I made the call. I looked at her. So am I. And in that small exchange, something healed between us. Between me and the world, maybe. Because sometimes a whisper can shake the entire ground beneath a lie. And sometimes a soldier doesn't come home in peace. Sometimes, he comes home to finish the fight. There's a sound I'll never forget. Not bullets. Not screams. Not the roar of Black Hawks slicing through smoke. It's quieter than all of that. It's the hiss of desert wind as it slips through the rubble of a fallen village, carrying the smell of gunpowder and blood. That whisper that fills the silence after an explosion, the kind that makes your ears ring and your heart pause. I heard that sound again last night. But I wasn't in Kandahar. I was in Riverbrook. In a motel room that smelled like bleach and false promises, staring at a cracked ceiling as memories climbed out of the dark like ghosts. That's the curse of survival. Your body makes it home, but parts of you stay buried where you bled. After the meeting at the diner, Rachel had offered to let me stay in her brother's spare room. Jameson was still away at the academy, and she said it would be safer than the streets. I declined, too many years of needing exits and open sightlines. I wasn't ready for walls I didn't choose. So I rented a week at the Green Lantern Motel. $48 a night. Linens threadbare. TV was older than I was. But it was mine, and I could sleep with my boots on. Sleep, what a luxury that is. That night, I dreamt of Whitaker again. Only it wasn't the man from the screen. It was the younger version. The one whose leg I pulled from beneath that burning Humvee. He was bleeding hard. Shrapnel in his shoulder. Dust caked on his teeth. He was screaming orders at ghosts, trying to hold a line that no longer existed. And I was screaming too, because I couldn't lift him this time. Couldn't move. When I woke, my hands were clenched so tightly around the blanket that my knuckles were white. I sat up, breath ragged. It's always Kandahar. Never home. By mid-morning, the team from D.C. had set up in a borrowed office above a shuttered bakery downtown. 3 of them, Ava Washington, a civil rights attorney who looked like she could stare down a federal judge without blinking, Quincy, Q. Morales, a paraplegic tech genius with sharp wit and sharper eyes, and Marcus, Ghost, Price, former Army intel, quiet as shadow, but moved like a man who never really stopped being a soldier. I walked in and they stopped talking. Ava rose from behind a desk scattered with files. "Mr. Turner," she said. "I've read your service record. I'm honored." I nodded once. "Don't be. Paper can't smell the burning." That shut the room up for a second. Then Q rolled forward in his wheelchair, grinning. "Well, hell. We were wondering if the legend would live up to the scars." I sat in the folding chair they offered. Metal cold against my back. "Good. Comfort makes you soft. What do you have so far?" I asked. Ava opened a laptop and turned the screen toward me. "We've started mapping Riverbrook PD's internal patterns. Use of force reports. Suppression of complaints. Every IA investigation in the past 10 years has been quietly closed or rerouted. There's a name that keeps showing up in the routing memos, Captain David Brick." I recognized the name. "Used to be a state trooper," I said. "Got promoted after a clean drug bust turned into a shootout." "That's the one," Ava confirmed. "Brick runs internal affairs now. That means the fox is guarding the henhouse." "Or gutting it," Q added. Ghost chimed in. "We've also tracked financials. Officers like Barnes and Kyle, mid-tier grunts, are living way above their pay grade. Second homes. Off-road toys. One of them bought a boat last year. All in cash. Ava added, we've traced those funds to a shell company called Silverage Solutions. Guess who owns it? Falcon Core, I said. She blinked. You already know them? I know their work, I said. They supplied half the contractors we shared the desert with. Mercs in body armor who didn't salute and didn't answer to anyone. They make money off of instability. Ava leaned forward. And now they're applying that model to domestic law enforcement. Gentrification by suppression. Create safety zones by removing the undesirables, homeless, addicts, and veterans with no support. Then sell that sanitized land to developers. And I was the wrong kind of trash in the wrong place at the wrong time, I muttered. Ghost added, we've also identified what appears to be an off-the-books holding site. Not the local jail. Something older, maybe the abandoned furniture warehouse south of town. What are they doing there? I asked. No records. No warrants. But two locals we spoke with mentioned that folks who speak up about police brutality tend to disappear for 24 hours and then leave town. Some don't come back at all. My jaw clenched. I hadn't felt this kind of slow, clean anger in a while. It wasn't heat. It was ice. Have you gone to the feds yet? I asked. Ava shook her head. Not yet. We need airtight evidence. If we tip our hand too soon, they'll shred everything. People like Brick and Falcon don't play by the book, but they sure know how to burn the library. Then let's not give them time to strike first, I said. Later that day, I visited the shelter. Not to hide. To remember. The Pine Grove Veterans Shelter wasn't much, just converted rooms in an old textile plant. Smelled like mildew and disinfectant. But it was safe, and sometimes safety's the only luxury you get in this life. Inside, I found a man named Clarence. He was a Navy corpsman in Nam. 68 years old. Still walked like a boot camp instructor, even though he shuffled more than marched. He'd been in Riverbrook for 5 years. Eli Turner, he said, gripping my hand. Didn't think you were real. Thought maybe the rumor was just ghost talk. Depends on the day. He laughed, then grew serious. I saw what happened. Word spreads. You stood tall. Had no choice. There's always a choice, Clarence said. You chose to stay human. We sat in a common room for a while. He told me stories of friends who vanished. Of the cop who broke a man's ribs for refusing to move off a public bench. Of how some mornings, you wake up and someone else's belongings are gone, and no one ever speaks of it. Fear is a language, he said. They speak it fluently. I nodded. But courage is contagious. That night, I called Whitaker again. I asked him to tell me something I hadn't dared ask in years. Why didn't you call me sooner? He was quiet. I didn't know where to find you, he said. You disappeared after Sarah passed. I swallowed hard. I didn't disappear, sir. I was just, no one was looking. He said nothing for a long moment. Then, I'm looking now. I ended the call and stared at the phone in my hand. The line between a man and a ghost is thin. All it takes is one person to see through the fog. By the end of the week, Ava had enough to act. Hidden body cam footage. Bank transfers. Whistleblower testimony from Jameson, Rachel's brother, who finally stepped forward with recordings from inside the academy. We've got them, Ava said. But I wasn't smiling. Because I knew something she didn't. You're forgetting the rule of rats, I said. When the ship starts sinking, they bite their way out. Brick won't go down quietly. What do you mean? I said, standing slowly, he'll burn the whole precinct before he lets us take it from him. We need to move. Now. The first shot didn't come from a gun. It came from a rumor. 3 days after Ava told me we had everything we needed to bring Brick and his rotten network to the ground, someone leaked Rachel's name online. Waitress trader supports anti-police agenda. Just 5 words. No evidence. No context. No mercy. The comments came first. Should have spat in his coffee. Hope she's proud, ruined her town. And then came the threats. Anonymous phone calls in the middle of the night. Windows rattling. A shadow that lingered across the street too long before disappearing. Rachel tried to play it cool. Told Ava and me she was fine. Told herself this was just noise. But I'd been in places where silence was a weapon, and Riverbrook was starting to feel like those places again. The day after the leak, someone threw a brick through Rachel's apartment window. No note. Just glass and cold air. She called me, her voice shaking. I don't know what to do, Eli. Pack a bag, I said. You're staying somewhere safe. Tonight. I'm not leaving my home. It's just walls and rent. You're not safe there anymore. And what? I hide while they destroy everything. You survive, I said flatly. And then we hit back. Hard. Ava moved her to a secure hotel on the edge of town under a false name. We disabled her social media. Q wiped anything that could be used to track her. But I could see it on her face that night as she sat curled up on the edge of the bed, fingers fidgeting with the hem of her sweatshirt. They weren't trying to silence her. They were trying to erase her. The following morning, I visited the diner. I hadn't been back since that first night. The place was half empty, quieter than usual. Customers hunched over their plates like guilty secrets. When I walked in, the regulars stiffened. One man left his meal and stood to leave. Another stared at me like I'd spat in his coffee. The manager, a thick-set man named Dennis, stepped out from the kitchen. You here to make another scene, he said, voice like gravel. No, I said. I'm here for coffee. He crossed his arms. We don't want trouble. I'm not trouble. I'm breakfast. He hesitated, then nodded toward a corner booth. Sit there. Keep your head down. I sat and drank quietly. The coffee was weaker than I remembered. Or maybe I was stronger now. That's when I noticed the young kid in the booth across from me. 16 maybe. Hoodie pulled over his face. Watching me. After a minute, he stood and walked over. You're the guy, he said. I looked up. Depends who's asking. The one they arrested. The vet. I nodded slowly. My dad said you're a liar. Said you made the cops look bad. But, he glanced around and lowered his voice. My uncle's homeless. They took him. Said it was for loitering, but he never came back. What's your name, son? Jaden. Have you ever talked to anyone about what happened to your uncle? He shook his head. You just did. He looked relieved, like he'd finally let go of something heavy. Don't stop talking, Jaden, I said. The world's finally listening. He left the diner quietly. But I knew in my gut that encounter mattered. Sometimes, revolutions begin with whispers, not megaphones. That afternoon, Ava gathered the team. We had evidence. More than enough. But the system was slow. And Brick was fast. Captain David Brick has filed a restraining order against me, Ava announced, tossing papers onto the table. Claiming I've endangered law enforcement officers by inciting public distrust. Can he do that? Rachel asked, now back with us after a secure move. He can file anything, Ava said. It won't stick. But it sends a message. He's preparing to strike first, I muttered. He's building a defense by painting himself as the victim. Ghost, sitting in the corner, spoke up. He's cornered. That makes him volatile. Rachel swallowed. What if he comes after me next? He already did, I said. With a brick through your window. Next time it'll be worse. So what do we do? Q asked. Ava stood, her posture razor straight. We force his hand. That night, Q launched the first strike. A live stream. Short. Sharp. Devastating. Rachel's recorded footage played across Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter simultaneously, Barnes and Kyle taunting me, threatening me, dragging me from the diner. Crystal clear. With timestamps. With names. And with context. Followed by commentary from Ava, quoting policy violations and legal statutes. It hit like a bomb. By midnight, the video had been viewed over 1.2 million times. Hashtag Justice for Eli trended nationally. Veterans organizations issued statements. A congresswoman retweeted it with a single caption, unacceptable. We knew the blowback would come fast. And it did. The next morning, the local paper ran a headline. Riverbrook's reputation under siege, national attention draws unwanted scrutiny. As if we were the villains. As if truth were the threat. But there was something else that came that morning, too. Jameson. Rachel's younger brother. Cadet. Good kid. Torn between loyalty and conscience. He showed up at the safe house pale as death. I need to talk to you all, he said, hands shaking. I recorded something last night. At the academy. He handed Ava a flash drive. She plugged it into her laptop. And then we listened. Captain Brick's voice came over the speakers. Low. Smug. Cold. Don't worry about Turner. We'll make him disappear like the others. They always slip through the cracks. And if this Ava woman keeps poking her nose in, we've got friends in Harrisburg who know how to shut doors quietly. You boys want to wear this badge, you better understand, justice is what we say it is. The room went silent. Even Q stopped tapping his keys. Rachel covered her mouth with her hand. Ghost muttered, we've got him. Ava's eyes were on fire. This is it. This is the bullet. And then the knock came. 3 hard raps on the door. We froze. Ava signaled me. I moved to the peephole, heart thumping. It was 2 uniformed officers. But not Riverbrook PD. I opened the door slowly. Mr. Turner. That's me. We're from the State Bureau of Investigations. We need to speak with Ms. Washington. Now. Ava stepped forward. What's this about? We've received reports of unauthorized surveillance and possible evidence tampering originating from this location. She blinked. Are you serious? This is a courtesy visit. But we need you to cease all operations until we complete a review. That was Brick. That was his play. If he couldn't bury us with bullets, he'd bury us in bureaucracy. I stepped in front of Ava. We've got everything backed up off-site, I said. Even if you take every drive in this room, the evidence still lives. The taller officer narrowed his eyes. Sir, we're not here to intimidate. No, I interrupted. You're just doing your job. But ask yourself this, if the people who sent you here didn't have anything to hide, why are they this scared of the truth? He didn't answer. They left. For now. We knew then, the clock was ticking. Brick was making his final moves. And if we didn't act, someone would get hurt. Or vanish. Or worse. So that night, I made a call. Not to Whitaker. To someone else. Someone I hadn't spoken to in years. A man named Wrench. Real name, Samir Taleb. Former combat engineer. Lost his left eye in Helmand province. Gained a reputation for building surveillance rigs from broken radios and spare parts. He owed me a favor. Wrench, I said when he picked up. I need your eyes on Riverbrook. And I need them fast. There was a pause. How big are we talking? Widespread surveillance. Multiple targets. Possibly armed. We're tracking corruption across law enforcement, private contractors, and real estate developers. Just another Tuesday then, he replied. You coming? He didn't hesitate. Already packing. Back at the safe house, I laid it out for the team. This isn't about just Riverbrook anymore. This is bigger. We've hit a vein. And Brick knows it. Ghost looked at the map we'd pinned with string and photos and names. You think he'll run? No, I said. Not yet. First, he'll try to clean up. Silence the weak links. Erase the trail. Which means someone else is in danger, Ava whispered. I nodded. Rachel. Or Jameson. Maybe even Clarence at the shelter. Or me. We all stared at one another. The war wasn't coming. It was already here. And this time, the battlefield wasn't some desert halfway across the world. It was home. The first real casualty was silence. The second, was trust. It happened on a Tuesday, the same cursed day of the week they arrested me at the diner. We'd been planning a press drop. Ava had the affidavit drafted, Ghost was building a timeline from the voice recordings Jameson had captured, and Rachel was prepping a follow-up video that would hit harder than the last. Then Rachel disappeared. She'd stepped out to get lunch, tacos from the truck on Maple, 10 minutes away. I was on the motel balcony when she left, hoodie up, camera bag over one shoulder. I even waved. She smiled faintly, that tired kind of smile that says, I'll be back, without words. But she never came back. 15 minutes passed. Then 30. Then an hour. Ava tried her phone. Voicemail. Q pinged her GPS, it had gone dark. Not powered off. Just, gone. Jammed. Scrubbed. That only happens if someone wants to erase you. By the time we realized what had happened, I was already lacing my boots. She wouldn't just leave, I said, pacing like a caged wolf. She's too damn stubborn. Ava nodded. This is retaliation. Ghost leaned against the window, arms crossed, eyes scanning the empty street. They didn't take her far, he said. Too risky. Too public. But they won't hold her long. They're panicking. They'll hurt her, I muttered, my hands shaking, not from fear, but fury. They'll try, Ava corrected. But Rachel's smarter than they think. Just then, Q wheeled in from the next room, laptop open in one hand. I tapped into the traffic cams, he said breathlessly. 5 minutes after she left, a black Ford Explorer with no front plates turned off Maple and cut down Trenton. I've traced it to a city-owned property, the old Crestline Furniture Warehouse. The name made Ghost turn. That's the one I told you about. Unlisted. Off books. Last used as an impound lot 15 years ago. They took her there, I said. Ava blinked. How can you be sure? Because that's where I'd take her. I pulled on my coat and looked at Q. Can you give me eyes? I can give you a map, exterior cams, and maybe a heat signature if they didn't kill the power. Good. I turned to Ava. I need volunteers. Veterans. Quiet ones. You're not calling the state police, she asked. No time. And besides, what do you think Brick has on the local state trooper post? We go in now, or we lose her. An hour later, I stood in the parking lot of a forgotten gas station 2 blocks from the warehouse. Wrench had arrived in a van full of drones, thermal scanners, and enough comms gear to coordinate a jungle raid. Behind him stood 4 men, 2 Marines, 1 Air Force Security Forces, and 1 retired Army Ranger. They didn't ask questions. They just looked at me and nodded. I nodded back. Extraction only, I said. No weapons. No confrontation unless we're forced. We get the girl. We disappear. Understood. Roger, they all echoed. Q's drone had confirmed 2 heat signatures inside the smallest building on the compound, Rachel, tied to a chair. 1 guard, moving occasionally. No sign of Brick. He was too smart to be in the room when it got messy. Ghost and I approached from the rear while the others created a diversion up front, just noise, something to draw attention. Smoke bombs. Broken glass. The kinds of things that make amateurs nervous. The lock on the outbuilding was old. It gave way to Ghost's gloved hand with a soft snap. We moved inside. Rachel sat slumped, her cheek bruised, 1 lip cracked. But her eyes snapped to mine the second I stepped into the light. Eli, she whispered, as if unsure I was real. I'm here, I said. The guard reached for his weapon, too slow. Ghost dropped him with a clean elbow to the temple. Non-lethal. Efficient. Surgical. I moved to Rachel and cut her bindings. You hurt? She shook her head. Just a punch. They were waiting for Brick to arrive. Then let's leave before he gets the welcome party. But as we stepped outside, headlights flared from the front of the compound. Too late. 2 cruisers. Doors opening. Boots hitting pavement. I pressed Rachel behind a metal bin. We'll draw them off. You slipped through the back. I'm not leaving you. You are. She grabbed my arm. I recorded them. The whole time. The audio's in my shoe. You never stop working, do you? I muttered, both proud and terrified. She smiled through bloodied lips. You inspired me. Then she vanished into the night with Ghost covering her 6. I turned toward the front, heart pounding. Let them come. We made it out. All of us. No casualties. No shots fired. Because by the time Brick's men realized we weren't playing by their rules, we were already gone. Back at the safe house, Rachel collapsed into Ava's arms. I never thought I'd be that girl, she whispered. The one who gets taken. You're not, Ava said. You're the one who made it back. And then Rachel pulled the audio recorder from the lining of her shoe. That's the moment we win, Q said. You got them talking. And she had. They'd bragged. They'd threatened. They'd named Brick. They'd referenced Falcon Corps by name. It was everything we needed. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt hunted. That night, I couldn't sleep. Instead, I sat outside, smoking a cigarette I hadn't wanted in 10 years. The smoke curled in the moonlight like ghosts around my fingers. That's when Clarence showed up. He shuffled toward me, coat too thin for the night air, eyes as sharp as they were in '68. "Heard about the girl," he said. "She's safe." He nodded. "That's what matters." I stared out into the night. "When I served," I said quietly, "I thought the battlefield would be the hardest place I'd ever lived through." Clarence sat beside me. "And now?" "Now I realize, the real war begins when people forget you came home." He placed a calloused hand on my shoulder. "You're not forgotten, Eli." "Not anymore." I didn't reply. Because the war wasn't over. Not yet. The next morning, Ava received a call from Washington. The Department of Justice was sending agents to Riverbrook. Federal ones. The kind that scare even crooked captains. They'd seen the video. They'd heard the audio. They were coming. But Brick moved first. Officer Barnes, one of the men who dragged me from the diner, was found dead in an alley behind the precinct. Official story: drug overdose. But Ava was clear. There were no drugs in his system. He was wearing a wire when he went to meet Brick. That wire is missing. He was tying up loose ends, I said, eyes narrowed. Ghost agreed. He'll keep going until he's stopped. Q tapped his laptop. We found financial records tying Falcon Core to 7 other towns just like Riverbrook. Same pattern. Same tactics. This is a national operation, Ava said. Riverbrook is just the tip. And Brick is their local firewall, I said. If he falls, the whole network's exposed. Then we bring him down, Rachel said, stepping into the room. No more bruises. No more fear. Just fire in her eyes. And I knew in that moment, we were no longer defending ourselves. We were going on the offensive. There's a moment, just before a building collapses, when everything goes silent. Not peaceful. Not calm. Just a stillness so heavy it feels like the air's holding its breath, like even the walls know the truth is about to land. That was Riverbrook, the night before the town hall meeting. The snow had started falling again, soft flakes settling on the brick rooftops and rusted streetlights like a white sheet over a body. Quiet streets. Closed doors. No one is lingering. Not after what they'd seen on the news. The footage Rachel leaked, the warehouse, the bruises, the voice of Officer Kyle saying, "We bury people like that," had hit harder than we expected. Harder than we were ready for, if I'm being honest. It wasn't just trending now. It was erupting. Veterans organizations, civil rights groups, and national media, they all came calling. The phone in Ava's motel room rang so often we had to unplug it. Q's laptop nearly crashed under the weight of interview requests. Ghost intercepted 2 separate black SUVs loitering outside the shelter and confirmed they were independent journalists sniffing around. Riverbrook wasn't a forgotten town anymore. It was a symbol. And symbols are dangerous. That morning, we held our final strategy meeting in the back of the new Safe House, an abandoned art gallery 2 streets over from Town Hall, once the pride of Riverbrook before the budget cuts and resignations drained it hollow. Ava stood at the whiteboard, dry erase marker in one hand, her phone clutched in the other. We go public tonight. Not just social media. Not just live stream. This is the real thing. Testimonies. Evidence. Names. Faces. And we do it in front of the whole town. Rachel sat beside me, jaw clenched, her bruises faded but not forgotten. The council's not going to let us speak freely. They can't stop us once we start, Ava replied. There will be press. Cameras. And the DOJ's regional liaison will be watching. Q chimed in, we've got the infrastructure ready. Redundant live stream servers. Real-time captioning. Backup power. Ghost leaned in. What about Brick? Still in hiding, Ava said. But he hasn't left town. He knows if he runs now, it looks like guilt. I spoke for the first time in 10 minutes. He is guilty. Everyone looked at me. And he's desperate. That makes him dangerous. They nodded. The plan was set. No more shadows. No more whispers. We were going to tell the truth, out loud, on camera, in a room filled with people who either ignored what was happening or helped cause it. Some of them were neighbors. Some of them were my friends once. But none of them would leave unchanged. Town Hall was an old colonial-style building on Ridgeway Street, red brick, white columns, and a bell tower that hadn't rung since '92. They cleaned it up for the meeting. New flags. Police tape gone. Chairs are arranged in rows beneath the fluorescent lights like pews in a church built for secrets. By 6:30 p.m., the place was standing room only. Reporters lined the back wall. Veterans sat near the front, some in uniform, some in hospital-issued coats. Locals watched from the aisles, bakery owners, janitors, teachers, kids in varsity jackets. They all came. They all needed to see. I stood near the rear, watching as Rachel adjusted her microphone, as Q gave Ava a final nod from the tech booth, as Jameson paced backstage, about to break open the very institution that once promised him a future. And then Ava stepped forward. Good evening, she said, her voice carrying across the room like a shot. My name is Ava Washington. I'm a civil rights attorney representing Eli Turner and a coalition of whistleblowers who have uncovered a pattern of systemic abuse, corruption, and coordinated civil rights violations right here in Riverbrook. Gasps. Shifts in chairs. Phones are rising, ready to record. Over the last 6 weeks, we've documented the targeted harassment of homeless veterans, the suppression of complaints against law enforcement, and the involvement of private contractors funneling money into a gentrification scheme disguised as public safety. Behind her, the screen lit up. Photos. Diagrams. Emails. Rachel's video played again, the arrest, the threats, the sound of Brick's voice. Every word is real. Every lie laid bare. People murmured. Some stood. One woman began to cry. Then Ava gestured for Jameson. The young cadet took the stage, dressed in civilian clothes now, shoulders stiff, mouth dry. My name is Jameson Miller, he said into the microphone. I was a cadet at Riverbrook Police Academy. He told them everything. About the secret training sessions. About the way officers were taught to profile, to escalate, to erase. About the files. The cover-ups. The body. He named names. Captain Brick. Officers Kyle and Barnes. And Falcon Corps. That was the bomb. The name that made people gasp out loud. A security firm tied to real estate acquisitions, linked to gentrification plans filed with the county 3 years ago, and now exposed as paying off officers to clear out neighborhoods before redevelopment. The mayor tried to interrupt. A man in a gray suit stood up, red-faced and sweating. This is slander, he shouted. You're poisoning the public against our town. Ava didn't flinch. This is evidence, Mayor. You'll have your turn. He sat down, his hands trembling. And then Rachel took the stage. She told them what it felt like, the silence in the diner when I walked in, the laughter of officers who saw me as less than human, the weight of making one phone call that started a national reckoning. She didn't cry. Not once. Her voice was steel. When she stepped down, the room was so quiet you could hear the snow tapping the windows. And then it was my turn. I walked up slowly. The floorboards creaked under my boots. I looked out at the crowd, faces I knew, faces I didn't, faces that turned away when I slept in the bus shelter, and faces that brought me coffee in the rain. I'm Elijah Turner, I said. I served 3 tours in Afghanistan. Pause. I've been a soldier. I've been a hero. I've also been a ghost. I looked directly at the mayor. The police chief is in the second row. At the teachers who told kids not to talk to men like me. When I came home, no one told me the war would follow me. No one told me I'd be arrested for trying to eat a meal. That I'd be called trash, that my service would be mocked, that my dog tags would be stepped on by men who never left their zip code. I held up my tags. These aren't just metal. They're my life. And when those men tried to erase me, they weren't just disrespecting a vet, they were dismantling what this country pretends to stand for. A hush. A heartbeat. Then I leaned forward. But here's the truth. You don't need a uniform to serve your country. Sometimes, you just need to stand up and refuse to be invisible. Applause. Not all at once. But it started. In the back row. Then from the vets. Then from the kids. Then, from people I thought had forgotten me. The mayor walked out before it ended. Cowards always leave early. The next morning, the fallout began. Captain Brick disappeared. Abandoned his house. Cleaned out his accounts. His cruiser was found in a church parking lot on the edge of town. The DOJ issued subpoenas. Falcon Corps' stock dropped 17% by noon. 8 officers across 3 counties were placed on administrative leave. 2 city council members resigned. A state senator called for a special investigation. Rachel's video passed 5 million views. And I stood in the snow outside the diner. Same stool. Same coffee. But something had changed. When I walked in, no one looked away. The waitress, a girl no older than 20, said, "Your coffee's on the house, sir." And thank you. And I sat there, my dog tags cold against my chest. The war wasn't over. But the silence was finally broken. And this time, the whole damn town had heard it. The night Brick vanished, Riverbrook slept uneasily. It wasn't the kind of sleep that heals. It was the kind that sits in your chest like a storm cloud, heavy and waiting. As if the whole town knew that something important was unfinished. That the worst man in the room had slipped through the cracks one last time. I stood outside the Pine Grove shelter, breath misting in the cold air, watching the frost form across the windows. I'd spent the last 2 nights sleeping on a cot in the common room, not because I had to, but because it reminded me of who this fight was for. Clarence came out beside me. He held 2 mugs of coffee, one chipped, one stained with time. "Heard the captain ran," he said without preamble. "He's not a captain anymore," I muttered. "He's a fugitive with a badge he never deserved." Clarence nodded and handed me the coffee. "You think they'll find him?" I took a sip. "We will." At 7 a.m., Ava called an emergency meeting. She looked exhausted but sharp. Her blazer was wrinkled at the cuffs, and her hair was pulled back in a no-nonsense knot. Brick withdrew over $400,000 from 3 different accounts in the last 48 hours, she said. 2 of those accounts were traced back to Falcon Corps subsidiaries. "He's cashing in his insurance policy," Rachel said grimly. Ghost leaned over the table, tapping a folder with his index finger. "We've tracked him to a private airfield outside of Brentwood. His name is on a manifest, Flight scheduled for 3:30 p.m. today. Registered under the alias David Breck. Destination unknown. Wrench, our newest arrival from the old squad, rolled in with his surveillance gear strapped to his chest. I've already got drones in the air, he said. An Echo just landed in Pittsburgh. He'll have eyes at the airfield by noon. Q chimed in from the corner, hands flying across his keyboard. We're setting up live stream contingencies. If this goes down the wrong way, the whole world's going to see it happen. I looked around the table. A lawyer. A journalist. A hacker. A disabled vet. A brother turned whistleblower. And me. We were the cavalry. And this was the final push. The road to Brentwood was long and winding, cutting through thick pine and bare hills. The snowfall had stopped by noon, but the sky was still heavy with gray. As we neared the airfield, I checked my side mirror and saw Echo's van pull into position half a mile behind us. He was ex-military intelligence, able to blend into any space and vanish like smoke. We called him the Ghost of Kandahar, and with good reason. The airfield itself was a modest strip of tarmac surrounded by rusted chain-link fencing and two prefab hangars. One of them was already humming with activity. Fuel lines. Baggage carts. And a private jet, engines already warm. Brick was making his move. I stepped out of the truck and adjusted my jacket. Everyone knows their job. I asked into the comms. Copy, said Ghost from the sniper post across the ridge. Eyes on, said Wrench, drone feed syncing to my tablet. Live stream hot, Q confirmed. Ava and Rachel waited in the command van, ready to trigger the media if things went sideways. They were the safeguard. The insurance policy against whatever last card Brick might try to play. Echo's voice crackled through. Target confirmed. Brick's entering the hangar office now. He's carrying a duffel bag, likely the cash. I took a deep breath. Time to finish this. I walked across the gravel lot alone, boots crunching with each step. The hangar loomed like an iron mouth waiting to swallow the last piece of this war. I didn't knock. I stepped inside. Brick was standing near the window, back turned, looking out at the jet like it owed him something. When he heard me, he didn't flinch. Turner, he said without turning. I figured you'd come. You were always predictable, I replied. He finally turned to face me, and for the first time, I saw what fear looked like on David Brick. It wasn't sweat or trembling hands. It was the absence of arrogance. His voice was low, brittle, like paper about to tear. You made quite the mess, he said. I cleaned up yours, I shot back. He snorted. You think you've won. Some live streams and viral hashtags. But you don't understand, Turner. This town, this country, it needs people like me. Quiet men who do what must be done. No, I said. This country needs people like Clarence. Like Rachel. Like the veterans, you were thrown in cells and left to rot. It needs truth. He stepped forward, opening the duffel bag at his side. $500,000 in cash, he said. 3 fake passports. I walk out of here, and I disappear. No trial. No circus. Not today. I pulled a recorder from my pocket and set it on the table between us. Care to make a statement? Brick's smile was dry. Almost amused. You still think this ends in justice? I didn't answer. I just waited. Outside, I heard the whoosh of the jet engines winding down. Brick glanced at the window, then back at me. He knew. You think Falcon Corps will let me talk, he muttered. I'm a liability now. Then maybe you should have chosen better friends. He pulled a pistol from inside his coat. I didn't flinch. Neither did Ghost, who whispered through the comms, "Target weapon visible. Permission to disable." I didn't answer. Brick didn't aim. He just looked at the gun like it was the last piece of armor he had. "They're going to kill me," he whispered. "You killed yourself the moment you signed those contracts." I stepped forward slowly. "You can face the consequences. Or you can die alone in the dark." He stared at the pistol, then at me. And then he dropped it. It hit the ground with a clatter. "I want immunity," he said. "Federal witness protection. I'll give you everything. We'll see what the DOJ says." Behind me, the door opened. Ava stepped inside, flanked by 2 federal agents in suits. "It's over, Captain," she said. He didn't resist as they cuffed him. Didn't even speak again. Just hung his head. And for the first time since this began, I saw David Brick not as a tyrant or a monster, but as what he truly was. A small man with no more shadows left to hide in. The arrest was national news within the hour. Brick's mugshot is plastered on every major network. The Department of Justice confirmed a full federal investigation into Falcon Corps and police departments in 7 states. Congressional hearings were announced. Whistleblower protections were expanded. Veterans Affairs issued new guidelines on housing discrimination. And Riverbrook? Riverbrook changed. The diner reopened with new management and a "Veterans Eat Free" sign in the window. The shelter doubled its capacity with federal grant funding. Rachel started a media nonprofit documenting veteran abuse cases nationwide. And I was asked to speak before Congress. I wore a borrowed suit and stepped into that marble room like I'd stepped into the Red Rail Diner all those months ago, calm, watchful, unafraid. "My name is Elijah Turner," I began, "and I served this country in war. When I came home, no one said thank you. But they sure remembered how to arrest me. I spoke for the ones who couldn't. Clarence. Sarah. Thomas, who froze in a drainage ditch. And I told them the truth, that dignity isn't something you earn with medals. It's something every person is born with. And when a society forgets that, when it criminalizes poverty and erases the broken, we all lose." When I got back home, the whole town felt different. Kids waved at me on the sidewalk. The mayor resigned. The Veterans Center broke ground where the old precinct used to be. They offered to name it after me. I said no. Name it after the ones who didn't make it back. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear that desert wind. Still see the dust rising after the RPG hits. Still smell the burn. But now, when I wake up, I don't feel invisible. I feel seen. And that's all I ever wanted. Not revenge. Not applause. Just the truth, spoken out loud, with no one looking away. 6 months after Brick's arrest, spring came early to Riverbrook. Not just in the trees, though the dogwoods did bloom sooner than anyone expected, spilling pale pink petals along Ridgeway Street like confetti from some silent celebration. No, the real change was in the people. The way strangers nodded when they passed each other. The way shopkeepers began offering discounts to veterans, not because someone told them to, but because they wanted to. And the way the town, once so quick to look away, had finally learned how to see. They saw the men sleeping under bridges. They saw the women walking miles just to find shelter. They saw us. And it all started with a lie they couldn't ignore, and a truth they couldn't forget. I live in a modest house now, donated by a nonprofit out of Philadelphia that had followed our story. 2 bedrooms, a front porch, and a small garden in the back where I grow tomatoes and mint. Nothing fancy. But every nail, every tile, Every window that holds back the wind feels like a miracle when you've spent enough nights shivering on concrete. Most mornings, I walk to the Turner Veterans Community Center. Yeah, they named it after me anyway. I argued. Said there were others more deserving. Said the name might draw the wrong kind of attention. But Q said something that stuck with me. This building doesn't carry your name because you asked for it, he told me. It carries your name because you didn't. Now, that old textile factory is alive again, classrooms echoing with voices, a medical wing treating PTSD, a community garden run by veterans and school kids alike. They even turned the rooftop into a greenhouse with solar panels. The town council approved funding unanimously. That would have been unthinkable a year ago. Funny how fast the tide can turn when enough people stop pretending they're dry. Rachel visits every week, usually with 2 cameras slung around her shoulders and a laptop filled with interview footage from across the country. Her documentary The Veteran Who Wouldn't Bow is now required viewing at 5 different police academies and has won 3 independent film awards. She still blushes when someone calls her a journalist. "You're the real hero," she says to me whenever we talk. But I always shake my head. "Heroes make choices," I reply. "You chose to speak when it cost you everything." I just refuse to stay silent. The first time she showed the film in a packed theater, I sat in the back row, slouched in my seat, hands clenched around my knees. Watching myself on screen felt surreal, like I was attending my funeral, but everyone forgot to bring flowers. I couldn't stand the sound of my voice. But when the credits rolled and the lights came up, the audience stood. Not for applause. Not for spectacle. They stood because they saw someone they recognized, in me, in Rachel, in themselves. Pain makes us invisible. But courage? Courage draws the curtain back. Jameson now works as an investigator for Ava's nonprofit, Turner's Law, a legal initiative focused on defending homeless veterans wrongly accused of crimes. He's sharper than ever, but the shadows in his eyes haven't gone away. We talk often. Sometimes we don't even use words. Just sit on the steps of the community center after sunset, watching the streetlights blink on like stars too tired to shine all at once. He blames himself. He thinks he waited too long to speak up. But I remind him that silence isn't always cowardice. Sometimes, it's survival. And the fact that he chose to break it, when it still could have cost him everything, makes him stronger than any badge ever could. And Ava? She's become something of a legend in this town. People used to whisper when she walked into a courtroom. Now, they stand. She splits her time between Riverbrook and D.C. these days, testifying in hearings, drafting legislation, and mentoring young attorneys. But she always comes back. "This place taught me something," she said once as we walked past the rebuilt diner. "That justice doesn't just live in law books. It lives in people brave enough to demand it." She still keeps Sarah's name in her legal briefs when she needs to remember why she fights. I didn't tell her to do that. She just knew. Sometimes I sit on my porch in the early hours before the town wakes up, a cup of weak coffee in hand, the smell of dew and turned soil around me. On the shelf by my window, I keep a small wooden box, the one with the dog tags. Mine. Malik's. Clarence's. And now Barnes's. Yes, Barnes. After the trial, his sister reached out. She'd seen the body cam footage. Heard the audio. She didn't excuse him. But she did want to understand how her brother had become someone who could do such harm. I didn't know what to tell her. So I listened. She mailed me his tags 2 weeks later. A note attached read, "Even monsters were once boys. Maybe you'll find a place for him among the fallen. Maybe not. Either way, thank you." I cried when I read that. Not because of Barnes. But because someone still believed he could be remembered, not as a hero, but as a human. And if we lose that ability to hope for someone else's redemption, we've lost everything worth saving. One afternoon, a teenager approached me outside the center. He wore a hoodie 2 sizes too big and carried a guitar case with duct tape holding it together. "You're the guy," he said awkwardly. I turned. "Which guy?" "The vet. The one they arrested." "I've been arrested more than once," I replied. He laughed nervously. "I just wanted to say. I used to think no one gave a damn about people like you. I mean, no offense. It's just, my uncle was a vet. Slept behind a gas station for years. Died alone. No one wrote about him. I didn't speak. I just waited." The boy swallowed. "Your story made me write a song," he said, unslinging the guitar. "Wanna hear it?" And there, in the sunshine, outside a building once abandoned like its people, that boy played me a song he called Dignity. His voice cracked. His hands shook. But it was the most beautiful thing I'd heard in years. I didn't just hear notes. I heard remembrance. 6 months after the final court ruling against Falcon Corps, a plaque was installed on the front of the community center. It read, "Dedicated to those who were told they didn't matter, and proved otherwise. Veterans now lead trauma support groups. High schoolers plant vegetables beside men who once fired rifles in foreign countries. Ava's interns teach first-year law students about the Shield Man scandal. And Rachel? She started a second documentary. This one's called The Town That Looked Away. It's not about guilt. It's about healing. I still walk past the Red Rail Diner sometimes. The stool where I once sat in silence is still there. But now, it's engraved. 3 words. You are seen. Not a monument. Not a headline. Just a truth. Carved in steel. They asked me once what I wanted people to remember about Riverbrook. I told them it wasn't about remembering me. It was about remembering what happens when we look away, and what's possible when we choose to look back. With open eyes. And open hearts. Because in the end, it wasn't rage that changed this town. It wasn't revenge. It was recognition. Recognition that the homeless man in the doorway might be a hero. The waitress who filmed the cops might be the bravest person in the room. That dignity isn't given, it's claimed. Sometimes, against all odds. As I write this, the sun is setting. Kids laugh in the playground behind the center. Q just installed a new computer lab with adaptive keyboards for disabled vets. And I'm just a man with tired hands and a full heart. I've lost things, more than I care to count. But I've gained something I never expected. Peace. Not the kind that comes from silence. But the kind that grows in noise, in the sound of a community rebuilding itself, one story at a time. And if you're reading this, or hearing this, or simply wondering whether one voice can change anything, let me tell you something I learned the hard way. It already has. All it needs now is yours. What if the man society cast aside held the key to exposing everything broken within it? This powerful story of Elijah Turner, a forgotten veteran turned symbol of justice, reminds us that dignity is not reserved for the wealthy, the powerful, or the loud, it belongs to every human being. Too often, those who serve their country return home only to be neglected, judged, or made invisible. But when one man refused to bow to injustice, he sparked a movement that brought a corrupt system to its knees. The lesson here is clear: one voice can change everything. Not because it shouts the loudest, but because it dares to speak when silence feels safer. Whether you're young or in your golden years, you've probably asked, does my voice still matter? This story answers with a resounding yes. It reminds us that courage isn't always about charging into battle. Sometimes, it's about standing up in your community, standing with someone who's been pushed aside, and standing for the truth when no one else will. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that hope is never out of reach, we ask you to like this video, share it with someone who needs courage, and subscribe to our channel for more real, human stories that restore faith and ignite purpose. Because in a world that forgets too easily, we remember. And together, we rise.